Welcome to the final part of data screening for factor analysis using SPSS Syntax. In this final video, we're going to look at formatting our dataset as a result of imputing for missing values that was covered in part 2, and then we're going to finish up with reversing negatively worded questions. So where we are from our part 2 video is we've imputed for the 18 questions that had missing values. What we did as nearly a safety mechanism is we actually we looked at all 30 questions that we had at the very start. We had 30 questions at the start, and then we looked at replacing for missing values, and so we end up with 30 new questions. So as a result of this, there's numerous things that we end up having to do. We end up having double the amount of information, double the amount of measurements, so I would recommend just deleting these measurements. Now, I would feel that you should use the syntax to delete them so that you'd have a track record of it. The next thing that I would be suggesting then is where you'd look at renaming your variables here. You can see that it's question1_1, that once you delete the previous question1, I would recommend renaming this as question1 here. Then I would look at potentially retitling these labels here if this is something that might be of interest to you. Then the next thing then will be updating the levels of measurement. So they've defaulted to scale after we replace for missing values. The questions are actually ordinal. The next thing then we would look at doing then is the labels. Okay, so at the moment we have 5-point Likert scale question responses, so 1 to 5, and at the moment we have no labels to those values, so we should look at doing that. And then the last thing then will be decimal places. So you can see as a result of using the replace for missing values, you end up, I mean, it works very well, but you end up with a bit of work to tidy up your data set. But it's worth doing this because ultimately your data set that you'll end up with then is what you're going to end up using going forward in an exploratory factor analysis or confirmatory factor analysis. So it's important that it's actually just formatted in the right way, and that's what we'll just focus on for this video. So we'll take it in stages. So the first thing is we're going to delete the variables we don't need. So we have kind of basically duplicated the 30 questions at the start. So we're going to delete them because we don't need them. We don't need the missing, the filter or the standard deviation. So I'm just going to I'm just going to copy these at the moment because I need these names for the syntax. So I'm just going to write some syntax to delete those measurements. So here we have in our syntax. So I'm just going to put in a comment here, delete unrequired variables or something like that. Okay, so we're going to type in delete will be the start. I never did the full stop at the end there for the comment, so we're going to have delete, and you can see here delete variables, press space, paste them. Now you'll see under the description for this video that there's a link to Google Drive which will have all this syntax, and you'll see for the syntax then that's on Google Drive that this will be just tidied up, but for the purposes of which tidied up basically mean that it'll go over 1 or 2 lines, but just for the purposes of keeping this recording some way short, I'll just leave it the way it is, which is not very pretty looking, but it will be tidied up if you look at the syntax on Google Drive. So I'm just going to highlight this, press Ctrl+R. It's telling me that it has deleted the variables. Let's come back up here. We should see that they're all gone, and they are. Now we're just basically gone back to our participants. So we have 96 participants across 2 groups, and then we have our 30 questions. So we've deleted our variables, the variables that we didn't want. What's very good for us now is that we actually have a track record of doing that. Okay. The next thing I would look at doing then is renaming the variables that we actually have here. So we have 30 variable names. I would think that we should just kind of tidy them up a small bit. I would like to name them question1 up to question 30 as opposed to question1_1. I think we just work tidying them up a small bit. So let's do this next. So what we're going to do here is we will rename variables. We'll say new variables. Okay, so full stop, and we're going to do the rename function in this case. So here's rename variables. Just going to paste in the variables there. So there we have them all pasted. Then we press equals, and then we paste in our new variable names. So we have the new variables, which are the original ones that we would have had them up here. So I'm just going to copy these down. It'll just save a bit of time. So I'm going to copy them down here. Okay. Now the one thing I just left out there is after rename variables, I should start this with a bracket up here. Okay. Then I close the bracket down here at the very end, and then do a full stop. Highlight all that, press Ctrl+R, go back to the data set. No, you don't always have to go back to the data set, but I just feel it's good at the start, so we just know everything's working, and we can now see that our variable names are all nicely tidied up there. Okay. The next thing I would look at doing then is tidying up the labels. Okay, so put in the labels, so something that I suppose is some way linked to what the question is ultimately what you'd have here. I would just feel that, again, obviously you could copy and paste maybe an old label down here, but I just think the track record is what's good, quite good here. So I'm just going to show you how to actually rename the labels as well. So I'll say retitle labels like this. So we're going to look at, if I start in typing in the function variable, we should see variable label somewhere. There it is here. So we state our 30 questions. So here are 30 names. So these are the original names. So then after each one, you state what you want to call it. Okay, so I'm just actually going to leave them blank. Okay, so I'm going to just do an apostrophe, space apostrophe. So this will actually put it blank, and I'm just going to do that for all 30 here. So you can just see it just takes a small bit of time, but the end result is worth it, in my opinion. So just pasting them all in here. There. Type, press 2. Nearly there now. And there we have it. And then you're just going to highlight them. Then press Control R. Come back to the data set just to make sure everything's worked out okay. And we can see now they're just blank. Now the reason I just have them blank, I suppose, is just that means that the names that we have here will overwrite the labels. But if your own data set, you might actually want to put in the proper labels. And that's just the technique to actually doing it. Okay. The next thing I would look at doing then is updating the levels of measurement. So these should all be ordinal. Okay, so the default to scale. So this is actually quite an easy fix to do here. So we'll say here, update levels of measurement. So we're looking at, in this case here, it's called variable is going to be our function again. Variable VARIABLE, and this time we're looking at the level. Okay, as you can see there, it prompts you. Then you can just paste in your 30 questions, as in their names again. So we have the 30 names. Sorry, actually, I need the 30 up here. I'm just going to come up here again to copy that because I lost that with the apostrophes. I'm going to copy these guys down here. This will actually be much shorter, this one here. And now the fact that we're going to really, I suppose, update the levels and they're all going to be the same level, we actually can do this all in one go. So in brackets after the last question, we can just state ordinal here. Close the bracket, and it's actually going to update it all for us there in one go, because all 30, we want them to be like that, and we can see it there. That's quite nice. Okay, and it would actually take us a bit longer even to actually manually update them by using the drop-down menu, so that's quite good. So the next thing then we want to look at is assigning the labels. So here we have the values of 1 to 5. 1 will be strongly agree, down to 5 being strongly disagree. So we want to update them. Now we actually have that already up at the very start up here, in the kind of preliminary setup that I would have looked at, and I would have talked through this in the part 1 video. So we actually have that. So I'm just going to just take that, bring that down here. I'll put in a comment. What comment will I say here? Assign labels, like this. Okay, and then we'll just highlight that, press Control R, come back in here, and we can see all the labels are nicely done there. Okay, so if we click on one of them here, we can see 1 to 5 is strongly agree down to strongly disagree. Now, obviously, we're going to have an issue with the negative order questions, but we'll sort that out now. We're nearly finished this bit. The last thing we just want to look at here is just the decimal places. So you can just see here it's coming out as 1.0. If you look at your data view, you'll see then that you have all these 0.0s, and we don't need them because we're dealing with Likert scale, so everything is 1 to 5, so we don't need these 0.0s anywhere. So I would just feel that we should look at just tidying them up a small bit. So how we tidy them up is we look at formatting the decimal places. So we're actually going to just put in, sorry, I didn't mean to do you there, put that back there, and we're going to look at format DP for decimal places. So we're going to use the format function this time, so formats, okay, and we're going to need all the 30 names again. So just going to bring these guys up here. Now when you format the decimal places, by default you have to look at the the width as well. So the width, when you look back here, it defaults to 4 here. Now I'm just going to change it. There's nothing wrong with having it 4. What the width here relates to is how many characters you want in your name over here. Just for, I suppose, just to show you how we can change that, I'm going to change that to 8, and I'm going to change decimal places to 0. You have to do both together. They're pairs. Now you don't have to. You could leave the width as 4 if you wanted to. That makes no odds. Okay. So we're just going to say open the brackets F8. So that says how many, I suppose, what the width for the names will be. So it was 4 there, so we're going to do an 8. Then we'll do full stop, and then we say 0. So the 0 then relates to the number of decimal places. And then we just highlight that. And we come back here to our data set. And when we come back to the data set, we can see now everything's gone to 0 decimal places. That's a small bit of time to do that, but I think the end result is worth it, because ultimately, and this is beyond I suppose, the focus of these videos, is to do a factor analysis. So when you're doing the factor analysis, it's important that your data set is as clean as possible, as tidy as possible, and that's what I suppose the driver for these videos actually are. Okay, so that's it there for that. Perfect. So I'm just going to save the syntax there. So I have it saved as data screen. I'm just going to keep that saved there. Now, the last point that I want to look at for the video here is reversing the question order. So in part 1, when I was explaining the sample data set, I would have said that we were dealing with 30 questions that were on the 5-point Likert scale system. And the way it was set up is that response 1 should be seen as positive answers. So that for question 1 to question 8, 1 was seen as strongly agree. Actually, they were all seen as strongly agree to strongly disagree. But question 1 to 8 and the ones after it here that aren't highlighted in red, they were all positively worded questions. So a 1, which is strongly agree, would have been a positive response. Now, the middle questions here, which I've just highlighted in red, so question 9 up to question 18, they're negatively worded questions. Now, there's no questions here. This is just kind of like a what-if scenario. So these are negatively worded questions, and that would then mean that the strongly disagree, which would be coded as 5, is actually a positive answer. So when you're doing a factor analysis, it's important for the factor analysis that the scaling is similar, that 1 would be positive all the way across for all the questions, and then 2 not as positive, and so on like that, or vice versa. 1 is negative all the way across, and then less negative, and so on like that. So it's actually important for us, if we're going to do a factor analysis, that we reorder the question 9 to question 18. Okay, so we're just going to I think it's actually quite an important point to doing a factor analysis. SPSS won't pick you up on it. It won't know whether or not your order is, whether you need to reorder the question. So something for you to be aware of. And I'm just going to show you how to actually do it here. Okay, so we're going to look at, we'll say, reordering measurements, we'll say. Okay, so what I find useful always, and I would have mentioned this in the previous video as well, is to do a pre and post. Like, what way do the questions look before doing the change around? Okay, so then you can kind of cross-reference and make sure everything is actually done correctly. Okay, so I'm just going to look at, we'll say, pre-reorder, something like that. Okay, so we're going to look at pre-reorder. Okay, so this is just seeing the flow for those 9 questions, right? So I'm going to just run off loads of ways we could do this, but I'm just going to run off frequency for this. This is what we had in the previous, so I'm just going to reset that. We're going to look at question 9 to question 18. They're the negatively worded questions. I'm just going to see what the frequency tables are for these. So I'll just press paste here. So I press paste. So this is just seeing everything before we change things around. Press Control R here, and then we get the output. And so we have our various frequency tables. Actually, you can just see here, look, and I'd forgotten this, but I'd often forget this, and it's something that needs to be fixed up. In part 2, I would have split the data set, because for the imputing, I would have said that since we had 2 groups, we should impute differently for each group. Okay, so here you can see the data set is actually still split, so I actually forgot to unsplit the file, and something that I actually really regularly do, because you're so focused on doing statistics. So I'm just going to show you how to actually unsplit the file, and then we're going to rerun these frequencies. Okay, so I'm just going to come up here, data, and then there's split file, and I'm going to put it back to the everything, put it back to all groups, so it's unsplit. I'm going to paste that actually in here. And when you paste it, I'm just going to put in that. So I've forgotten that. I'm just going to bring that up here to this one. I'm going to put in comment, don't forget to unsplit file. Okay, so this will be the syntax for splitting the taking the split off, and then we're going to run the frequencies. So I'm just going to run that again all in one go this time, and we can now see, look, it's all one together. Like if we look up above here, you can see it actually split it for group 1 and group 2 here, but now that we've turned off the split, now you can see everything is fine. Okay. So we've done 96 responses. I'm just going to look at the last one because we're just going to do a cross check on this one. Okay, so we can see here strongly agree is 24 and strongly disagree is 10. Now what we want this to be is we basically want the strongly disagree to be up at the top, to be and the value to be 10, as in the 10 is the frequency. We want strongly disagree to be up in second, neither to stay, then agree to be fourth, and strongly agree to be fifth. So we want to reorder the values, okay, but we need to keep the labels to them then. Okay, so that's what we're looking to do now. In the first set of videos that I would have put up on YouTube, I would have shown you how to kind of reorder question responses, and I would have mentioned at the time, even though I didn't do it in that video, that there was an extension bundle that you actually could download that would actually do it for you in one step, as opposed to when I did it in the previous video. I did it in the purest way of where we recoded and then we had to swap around the values, and it was kind of like a two-step process, while there isn't actually an extension bundle that you could actually download and it will do it in one step for you. Okay, so I'm just going to show you where the extension bundle is. So this is the web page here, so it's on the SPSS tutorials website, and where is it here? So this is the extension bundle. So I've already downloaded. When you see the syntax on Google Drive, I'll have this link in for you as well, so you can actually just download that. But this actually makes the process very, very straightforward. Okay, and I'm just going to it's actually very nice how it works out. Okay, so I have installed an extension bundle, is what it's called. Where it goes then is, when you've installed an extension bundle, is it actually goes into utilities, not into extensions. So it goes into utilities. I've installed other ones here. The one that we're interested in for this one is SPSS Tutorials Change Category Order. Okay, so we come in here. Now it's quite a nice one because you can see here, even though it's faded out, that there is the paste option. So we will have the syntax for swapping around the questions. So this is where we just state the questions we're looking at. So we're looking at question 9, question 10, question 11, question 12, question 13, question 14, question 15, question 16, question 17, question 18. Okay, there was those 9 questions. So these are the ones I'm just saying, look, if you negatively word questions, how do you actually handle them? So I just said that, look, I'll pick 9 questions here. So here's the 9 questions. Okay, what is the codes? What codes do you actually have? Well, they're coded as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we want to swap them around. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. This is what we want to do. Okay, now this is why you do the kind of pre-post check, to just make sure that the actual swap around has actually worked. So I'm just going to, we'll continue on with this. We go to paste. So here we have it. So we're just going to look at, put in a comment here. What comment will I say here? So we'll say reorder. I'll just put it in like that at the moment. Okay. We'll highlight this, press Control R. Okay. Does it work? Now, there's a few ways you can actually see does it work. You can come back in here and you can look at this. Look, question 9 to question 18. They now have swapped around. If I click on the values here, you can see, look, it actually now has gone to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, being strongly disagree down to strongly agree, which is actually what we wanted. Another way of doing it is just running off the frequencies. So this is kind of like the post step. Post frequencies will just stay here. This is what I like kind of doing, because then I can literally just see the table. So I'm just going to take the syntax that I have up there, bring it down here, then press Control R. And remember, I just said we look at the last one as an example. So this is the one before we swapped it around. So we 24 down to 10, strongly disagree being the 10, and strongly agree being 24. And if we shoot down now to our new ones here, we can now say, look, strongly disagree is up at the top, which is the 10, and strongly agree is down at the bottom, which is a 24. So this question here, so this is question 18. This was a negative worded question. That is what I'm saying for this. So that means strongly disagree would actually be a positive answer. So it's important that when you're doing a factor analysis, that all your positive answers are labeled the same way in SPSS. Okay, so in this case, all positive answers are coded as 1, and then the less positive it goes down to 5. Okay, so that's just an important step, and I think what makes it additionally important is SPSS doesn't pick up on this. Okay, so this is up to you as the user to realize that this is something that needs to be done. Okay, and this the last thing that I'd often like to do here is just, I suppose, save the data set, but then to have syntax for saving the data set. So you can see up here I've been saving the syntax as it's been going along, but what would be good is just to save the SPSS file as well. So this is the SPSS file, so our nice reformatted SPSS file that we would actually use to going forward to doing a factor analysis. It is unsaved at the moment, and I purposely just leave it unsaved more for an illustration for the purposes of this video, but maybe in reality I'd probably be saving it as I'm going along. But anyway, the syntax is the main thing. But here we're going to just save this. I'm going to save it as, we'll say, data for FA, as in for factor analysis. I'm going to, instead of press save, I'm going to press paste. If I press paste, then I come back in here to my syntax, and it's just gone down to the very bottom. You don't see that, so save final data set for FA, and here, and then this is it here. So I'm just going to run this off. So press Control R, and you can now see that the data set now has actually been saved. Okay, and the reason that that is very good, and I would have demonstrated this, I won't demonstrate it here, but I would have demonstrated this in one of the first videos I would have put up on YouTube, is as long as we have the data screening syntax and the original Excel file, that's all we actually need. We don't really need the data for FA, as in once we can have the data screening, we can rerun all the syntax and it will generate this data for FA automatically for us. Okay, and this is just something I would have demonstrated in my first set of videos up on YouTube, and it would be coded as V1.4, so it was actually the fourth part of the first set of videos if you wanted to go back and just look at that to see how it's useful. But ultimately what happens is if you happen to delete the data for FA dataset by accident, you could actually just highlight all your syntax. I won't do it here, but I just you can highlight all your syntax here, press Control R, and it will generate your new dataset for you. Okay, so that's where it makes this syntax really, really good. Okay, so I'm just going to save that there, and that brings an end to this, I suppose, these set of videos on data screening for factor analysis using SPSS. If you if you find them of interest, it's great. If you've maybe ideas that for future videos, I'm more than happy to read any comments, or you can reach out to me here. Here are different ways that you can contact me. And sure, like everything on YouTube, subscribing is good. Subscribe to the channel, and you will get updates on the most recent video uploads. And liking and sharing is always good. Okay, but look for the moment, anyway. Thanks very much, and all the best.